Hi, y'all be, man. Hairless Mix of the Blue Sea. It's me. We back. You already know what time it is. It's going to be a rough one, so let's jump into it. Chapter 1060. Luffy's dream. Let's just clickbait the entire community. A one chapter title. We hadn't been clickbaited with a chapter title in a while. They've actually pretty much been exactly what they've said. Now, granted, you know what? Let's just jump into it, right? So we knew this is what Luffy's take on the Sabo situation would be, right? And Robin also is like, this doesn't sound right. Of course, we always play both sides as far as what are the possibilities, right? But it was like a 95% chance that Sabo really didn't do this, right? And they're getting into like reminding, well, the reader in a way, what the Revolutionaries Army, what their goal actually is. And it's not to just kill random people. And something I had said why it didn't make sense in the first place when the chapter first dropped about the man being marked by flames is the fact that, like, just because Robin has been with the Rev even during the time skip, who's to say if that's the introduction of them, right? They could go back as far as, you know, like right after O'Hara. There's really no saying. But because she was in Alabasta and she knew how that place was ruled, she knew about Crocodile, like, it didn't make sense to her for that to be the type of person to go after, just like we all said. Like, we know Cobra's a good dude, but we kind of, the story had kind of told you he was going to get killed at some point just because he asked too many questions of the wrong kind. But that's why it never made sense to me. You know, the other part of it that kind of doesn't make sense is like from the world government side, like I had been saying, why pick Sabo, you know, specifically? And it just, I'll get into that later. You guys know how I was about that. It was just like, why Sabo, And it didn't have the effect that they thought, unless, like I had said a couple of chapters ago, what's going to come up here soon, right? But I just thought that was really, really, really interesting. Their choice of Sabo as the person who killed Cobra, given what the after effects are. Now, Luffy wants to go to Alabasta immediately, right? Um, Vivi's been ride or die. Like, that was the first real character we were like, whoa, she's gonna join the crew and da 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 da, right? But she has other responsibilities. Like, Vivi was cool, Kara was pretty cool too. But some characters get over hyped. We all know how that goes. But me personally, I actually did like Vivi. I thought Alabasta was cool to begin with, but I thought Vivi was cool. So, you know, her relevancy in the story, because of the beginning ties of the series, it just hits a lot harder, right? Personally speaking, for me. But this is interesting to me, and why I like it is because this is exactly what Yamato was talking about, right? Yamato just told Luffy about this. Like, I don't want to be worried about Wano. I don't want you to be worried about Wano because it might distract you from your journey, right? Odin didn't have to deal with that, and he found out the hard way. Like, when he came back home, like, whoa, things have really changed, you know. So because it reinforces Yamato's statement, I'm not saying it was placed here on purpose for that, but this is a perfect example. Because if we're, say we're, I don't know, 3 or 4 days away from Wano doing our own thing and being involved in some type of situation, Luffy would be distracted. And he does not fight well with distractions, right? He, like, if you think back to the Card Curry fight, he has to clear his head. He has to say things. He can't be distracted. That's just how he is. And this is exactly what would happen. Every other week he'd be talking about going back to Wano, or sending Zoro or something, or hey, like, it would definitely be a thing because of how he feels about Momo, and like his respect for Kazuki Oden, just the country in general, right? And everything they went through dealing with Kaido. He's gonna come back to Wano every other week. So this is like perfect explanation to go along with, like I said, reinforcing. I don't want to get too sidetracked with that. I just hope people appreciate Yamato's foresight as far as this kind of thing, because again, it just literally happened chapters later. Um, Now, Zoro maintaining balance as he should. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. We need to chill first. We can't just up and, go moving around. And besides, the last place she was seen at was Mary Jo's pub. And then Luffy says something. I'm like, hey, bro, like, I know you the MC, you my captain, but you might want to watch your mouth. Talking to the senpai, the Santa, or you calling him a chicken, about the Navy headquarters thing. And it's just like, all right, man, like, don't forget. I know you got Gear Fifth and all that, but we got Conqueror's Coding over here too, homie. Don't ever forget that. But Zoro mentioned something. He's like, yeah, this is like with your friends and your family, or your partner does this. They say stuff like this. Remember that time you said that one thing, and I'm like, oh, is this what we're doing, Zoro? I feel you, but are we really pulling one of those? Yo, Luffy, remember that time what you said about Ace? And like the look on Luffy's disappointed face is so hilarious. Like it's a couple of faces in the series that when they're drawn, it just hit different. Sanji's actual troll face is hilarious to me, and Luffy's did like kind of like the Wano faces, like Luffy's being disappointed face, right? Like when Usopp was talking about wanting Rayleigh to tell him everything or how he felt when we first met Rizzo. Like he had that look on his face, but Zoro brings up like, yo, just like with Ace, that's his adventure. Let him do his thing, be his own man. The same way, he didn't say this part, but that's the same thing Ace did for him. Like he didn't check up on Luffy until they ran into each other. He let him do his thing for literally a decade, trying to figure out what his path is going to be and all that. And he has to do the same thing because, like, if you believe in somebody's strength, your friends would be able to accomplish something. This is how you show it. And those of you who play team sports, you already know what this is like. Like, this is an every game occurrence, every practice occurrence. Having to trust that your comrades will be able to hold their own. And then if they can't, that's when you come and pick them up, not before, and vice versa. You know what I mean? So it's cool to see character development from the Straw Hats of all people, and it's not on the battlefield. Like a lot of people say they miss these type of moments, and it is true because it does feel a little bit different, right? But during Wano, they didn't have time to talk. I didn't have these type of moments necessarily, except for like, with Sanji and Robin and things like that, and Nami. But again, this is on the battlefield. This is off the battlefield, character development. So I like to see stuff like that. And of course, we see a barrel. And I ain't gonna lie, when I first saw the barrel, I'm like, if Carrot is in this barrel, man, if Carrot is in this barrel, man, I'm gonna have to bring out the passport. Me and Oda we gotta talk. But it's Carabone. Now I'm be upfront. I don't remember him being on the ship. I don't remember who chained him up and put him in the barrel. The fact that the barrel was chained, like he can get in any type of, I don't know, his ability is very strange, right? But I just didn't remember that. The last thing I remember him was giving Luffy food, right before going to fight Kaido for the last time. But other than that, I didn't remember what Carabum was doing because I just don't keep up with him like that. But I do. It does eliminate, I guess, an idea I had about who Caribou actually works for and who he could still work for, beating Sword, because he was not excited that they might be going to Mary Jo's pub. So even though it wasn't necessarily anything for him to talk about, I did notice that, like, okay, well, if he was like, oh, cool, when we get to Mary Jo, I can just do this. We didn't get anything like that. So he could still be tied to Sword, but he's not working for the world government. Like that was one of the possibilities was the world government, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Or else because nobody can hear what he's thinking. So it's not like he's saying this to throw anybody off. I think he just generally does not work for the world government anymore. So I can eliminate that from the equation. But at least for the time being. Now, when Zoro called Luffy a moron, about this whole situation, it was kind of funny, right? Because during that time, you got Sanji simp smoking for Vivi, just doing what a simp smoke does. And, Chopper was like crying. And sometimes I forget, like, Chopper's technically an actual kid. So sometimes when he does stuff, but then it's because for him, Alabasta, like, that's the beginning of his journey in a sense, right? He never really went anywhere before that, nor did he have a devil fruit. So I guess for him, as an adult figure outside of like, Dr. Correa or something, he's not really used to a bunch of adults that he had respect for, So I'm like, okay, and Nami, it was pretty obvious, that's our homegirl. They're like, they didn't know each other long, but they was long with each other long enough to have a similar bond, right? So it's like, okay, I can understand those reactions. You know what I mean? But the funny part, and for y'all who watch a lot of like compilation videos, right? Even if you didn't remember this scene popped in your head immediately just because that's a scene who's in everybody's compilation video, like funny moments in the series. And that was a situation where Robin, right, where Zoro was said what he said, and it was when Luffy was like, "Son through you," remember? And Usopp was like, "That's not really an insult," I see that clip at least probably once a month. So it was just funny seeing it this time around, and the names they call him. I mean, the only gear he's a part of his attack set. He has a lot of demon vibes about his persona, let's say. Luffy calling him Onigashima just hits different for me because I just immediately thought about Kaido. Dodge. You know what I mean? When I hear Onigashima now, that's what I think about. Roof piece, and I think about Zoro cutting off the horn of Onigashima and everybody being like, that's just, that was his little mini Mihawk moment. You know what I mean? And Nami called him a green Kaido, and I'm like, hey, look, oh no, my man, what clap Kaido? If that's who you want to nickname the Senpai, the Santa Ryu, hailing in from the south side of Shimosuke Village. If we want to drop the Pirate Hunter moniker, right, for Mario, or we'll call Marimu, Haijaku no Kaido. Like, if that's what we're gonna start calling Zoro, hey, I'm with it. You know what I'm saying? Hey man, if anybody besides Luffy deserves that type of title for the time being, it's the one I wonder, man. You know what I mean? So it was just it was funny to me. But what else happened before we start getting into the deep stuff? Oh yeah. I don't know why this never really hit me before. Um, I don't think it's intentional. I think it's just a coincidence that Zoro's been calling Sanji, number four and all that. And in this chapter, when he said fourth, I don't know why, but it finally hit me. I'm like, yo, is he calling him Minato? And I thought about Sanji's speed, and you know what I mean? I'm like, oh, I don't know why the Sanji fans didn't make that correlation. Like that's your get back, right? Obviously, I don't hate Sanji, but some of y'all simp smokers are crazy. You know what I mean? But we just start calling Sanji the Yellow Flash, man. I'm cool with that. Black leg, yellow flash. You know what I mean? I don't know why it never hit me before until today, but yeah, I guess Sanji's about to be Minato for the rest of the series. I'm cool with that. My rival was reading the paper and basically explaining Cross Guild and some of the stuff that's happening. And it is Luffy, Luffy, he's never really a salty person. You know what I'm saying, about other people and stuff like that. That's not really his get down. But he cannot stand that Bunky is Yonko. Like, it is it's stronger than Karoseki right now for him. Like, he's just not buying it. I mean, he shouldn't. But at the same time, like, seeing Luffy being salty about another character, I'm not used to that. So it's just it's just funny. Like he's really upset about, but it's almost like he's how we are about stuff in the series. Like we get real salty. Like Luffy is mad salty about this buggy thing, but of course, Robin brings up that there's other information out there about familiar names. Luffy ain't interested. And I'm like, see, Oda, and his excuse is terrible. Like, I don't want to overload you with information, Luffy. And I'm like, okay, this is Oda talking about us. So stuff is about to get crazy, right? That has to be the reason. But I'm like, yo, Oda, you know we read Hunter x Hunter over here, dog. We're all we know all about being over informed, all right? Like if you read the succession arc of the story multiple times, like because it does take multiple times. We're not worried about too much info. This the final saga, dog. You said no more secrets, just like you clickbaited us with Luffy's dream, right? Talking about it in a chapter and having the Straw Hats respond as if like Roger Laugh-Tale type of vibes, which I think is kind of cool. Like, because again, we've never talked about this in the series, and he brings up volume 60. You already know it's like the only volume that I remember every chapter, like to the number, to the page panel is literally my favorite volume in the entire series. Is the Aesop Luffy flashback. Now that might change, obviously, but for the time being, it still is. That and probably Thriller Bark area, right? So it's I don't know what it is about that flashback, but it just hits different, man. So for him to bring it up and the fact that he talked about his dream and like I said, the way they responded, and he said Shanks cried. I don't know what it's supposed to mean. His dream is supposed to mean. In the context of what he was saying, talking about Sabo and wanting everybody to have freedom. I mean, it would be pretty cliche, but but not really, because we already know that One Piece itself is something different than what Luffy's dream is, and it's not like a concept. But it doesn't mean Luffy's dream can't be a concept. And I was also thinking like the way he was talking to the crew about it. You know, he's laying down and he's got his eyes closed while he's talking about this. So at some point, I'm guessing that's the way we're going to find out. He's going to be actually sleeping. And he says the end of the dream. So there's something else in there, which, like I said, character development outside the battlefield is awesome for Luffy in particular. Like we see, even though he's a Yonko, he's just as selfish as ever and bratty. You know what I mean? But him talking about something like this is not something that probably would have happened before, unless by accident, just pure accident. Like he just came out and just started talking about it, and he doesn't talk about himself very often. Like think about the Tom and Ace situation, right? He didn't even say anything. He was just like, "Oh, he's dead," and then that's it. He didn't bring up anything about himself. So I like to see this kind of thing from him because it does show his own personal growth. Again, other than the conversation he had with Jinbei back on, Skynet after Ace died, there hasn't really been enough. I won't say enough, but the opportunities really haven't presented themselves for him to have those type of thought processes, right? They've just been too busy with bad guys. It's kind of like real life. You kind of forget about your own thing, doing your day to day. So I really enjoyed that part of the chapter because it didn't have any. Although we didn't learn anything. I do like how they're responding to him. With Chopper, being again a child, like literally a kid, it doesn't like it almost probably wouldn't have mattered what Luffy said. He might have responded that way. The rest of the crew are just like, oh, okay, well, yeah, this is kind of status quo for the phenom from Fuchsia. But I did think it was interesting that it was brought up right after Sabo talking about freedom again. So I guess that it might relate to that. I'm not really sure, but it would make sense if you think about his own upbringing and knowing what happened to Sabo and knowing what happened to Ace, where technically he didn't really live. He did what he wanted, but he still, because of his name being tied to Roger, right? He was never really truly free from that. And it ended up costing him his life. I mean, part of it was his own fault, but initially the world's hatred for him wasn't even based on anything that Ace did. You know what I mean? And maybe to Luffy because Ace, besides Shanks, Ace and Sabo were basically his first inspirations about life and things like that. It may tie to that. I don't know, but that's kind of the area that I was thinking about um, when I was reading that. And then I just thought it was, again, him laying down and sleeping. And then we know about the thing with Blackbeard not sleeping. Like, it may not be foreshadowing, but that's kind of the area that my mind is um, wandering in. So, again, not finding out what it is annoying, but I think the payoff is, usually, I can't say usually, but most of the payoffs that have took longer so far, like what we're seeing now, tying back in the story, it's been worth it. I doubt that won't be the same for Luffy's dream. So Frankie was like, the way he says, "Oh, let's just go get the last poneglyph and wrap this up," because Luffy, in his mind, to achieve this dream, he had to be Pirate King to even be able to do it. Which, again, it might change things a little bit because I always thought he wanted to be because that's what he wanted to be. But that might have just been his main reasoning. We don't really know yet. Obviously, Shanks had his influence, but Luffy is his own person. So I don't know. I'm boggled, but at the same time, I'm intrigued. Like why even talk about this now? But yeah. So now, here we go. Right? Let's just buckle up here. Because when Frankie's talking about getting the last poneglyph, Robin's like, "Yo, no one's even seen that thing in forever." Of course, that's something that she would know. And then I'm sure she comes across a lot of fake poneglyph rubbings and things of that nature, and probably based on previous poneglyphs. For her, certain things wouldn't add up, right? It just wouldn't make sense. Even though she hasn't read all of them, she's probably read enough of them to where she has a pretty good idea on what they're going to say. Just like when we found out about Pluton, she already knew it was Wano, even though we didn't even talk about that back then. Which, again, when it comes to long payoffs, for me personally, I enjoyed that because we know Robin withholds information, just like with the situation in the beginning of the chapter, right? With her talking about the newspaper and other things going on that Luffy has no interest in. It didn't. I mean, obviously, Robin read the paper and probably Zordo did too, just based on his statement about Vivi being last seen in Mary Joie. So it seems like the crew are acting, or they're being more invested in world information, right? That wasn't always a thing pre-time skip, but now in the new world and with the things they're dealing with, they don't have a choice but to utilize information at a higher rate, right? Because it's going to come into play as we get close to the end of the series. So I've always been the impression, I guess I'll just talk about this now. I've always thought the last poneglyph was in Mary Joie. It is really, to me, the only place, I won't say it's the only place, but besides the island we've never been to, it makes the most sense, which is why, like, the world government hasn't really been adamant about securing other poneglyphs and things like that. Is because they already have all that stuff, so they don't need to. But at the same time, the way I think the ancient weapons may or may not perform, it seems like a time based thing. Not necessarily conditions have to be met, but because they're so powerful, they probably can only be used once every so often, or there's something to it. Because they would just spam ancient weapons over and over again. Like I, like giving out, but even though the world government doesn't act in that way, logically that's what you'd think they would be doing, but that's not what they do. So I just assumed it was always some sort of restriction, usually broken powers and stuff like that. They usually have a restriction to them, or else the first person who came into power would always be in power and it'd be almost impossible to remove them. But we know at some point the celestial dragons probably lost a battle, pre Void Century. So something must have happened to where ancient weapons just can't be used over and over again. But let's just jump into that. I'm getting ahead of myself. I just even thinking about that. But that and the fact that, like, the way Robin said that one hasn't been seen in a long time, it's like again, the World Peace world is vast. It could be underwater somewhere, just like the one Jinbei found, But again, I've just always thought that they have at least one to where if you really about that ancient weapon life, you got to come see the Goro say to come get it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how strong they are, or instant messenger summon for that matter, but it's something I talked about before where as strong as the Yonko are, they never did what Dragon tried to do right now and have the Rev just run up in there. And there has to be a reason for that. If they were strong enough or had enough manpower to do some of the things that they got away with, I know we joke about the Marines like over and over again because they are a joke in a lot of ways, but the Yonko themselves and other pirates are not the only ones in their way, So, like, even with Zebek, right? It wasn't just the world government who was in his way. It was Roger. But at the same time, Zebek was so much of a threat, even Roger was like, hey, look, I know y'all the world government, but we can't have this guy here. We just can't do that. And we're kind of seeing that replay itself through the Revolutionary Army at this point because we're at McDonald's HQ now with the world's worst Wi-Fi, right? And Sabo was tracked to Lelusia. Now, off the top, there were people in the stream yesterday. Obviously, shout out to y'all that came by the stream. I did not remember the name, but as soon as somebody, mentioned the cover story, I knew exactly what they were talking about. I'm like, oh, with the milk girl. I don't know if her name was Moda. I don't know why in my head her name was Moda, but she almost has like the same character design as I want to say, well, actually, yeah, their character design is very similar from Makainos. Like they look very similar. But anyway, I just remembered from that cover story, which led to Ace going, to the Marine headquarters base where he was disguised and dressing up and eating food in the cafeteria. He delivered a message to a Marine, and that's the only reason why I'm bringing this up. Why any of that stood out to me because I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I remember Ace delivered a message to the Marine, like the milk girl. She's related. I don't know. I'll have to go back and look. Obviously, I didn't reread that chapter or the cover story before recording this, but I will this weekend. But I know that's what happened. I just couldn't remember the name of the Marine that she's related to, but this is the same place, Luja. And the Gorosei bring up that they're one of the 8 countries that have recently rebelled, right, during this whole Flame Emperor situation, right? Which those countries, although they were inspired, it was for the wrong reasons because the wrong person was killed. Again, tying back to like the confusion behind and one of the things I said is usually a power, right? Even in real life, you guys know, if you know your world history, this was like pre-World War II vibes type of stuff, like the way the government was behaving. Like we know governments when they want to do something, especially when it comes to physical threats, they need a reason. On paper, at least, they need a reason because hearts and minds and how things are recorded and viewed change the narrative on things so much, right? With protesting and things of that nature. Like, this is straight out of real life, like what he's been doing with the girl, say this whole series, right? With cleansing and like this was a real thing, right? Like this isn't just some idea for a story. This type of stuff, to a certain extent, still happens, especially when it comes to information suppression, right? Citizens being unaware of certain things that's going on, like literally right down the street from them. Um, I like I don't like that this happens in real life, but I like the way it's shown in the series because if you're just looking at it as a story, it's not really I don't know what the word is. Hurtful. That's not really the word I'm thinking of. But when you relate it to real life history, you're like, yo, this is humans have some, some work to do. But not to get too sidetracked. But this is basically what I said. Like, okay, well, them promoting him killing Cobra would be a way to enact using more force than what's normally acceptable, which if you're the world government, it's kind of hard to say because they seem to just be able to do whatever they want, but yet they're still they still care about narratives, which I never understood that part about them. And I'm getting sidetracked. I could do the whole discussion about the Gorosei. You guys know how that goes. But anyway, the countries that currently rebelled, Lucia just happened to be one of them. And again, why I was bringing up these cover stories, because if that Marine was part of the people who can hear this current transmission in some way, shape, or form, they're going to know what Lugia is. So, although the people of Lugia may cease to exist, so to speak, it doesn't mean they're going to be forgotten. Like, this isn't Sugar's ability. You just, like, blew up an island. Like, people aren't going to forget that they had loved ones there. That's not how that works. But the fact that it was recent countries to me says that they were going to do this anyway. Like I was saying, they was looking for an excuse to use a bit more force than they've been using in the series, because we see instant messenger Sama, the AOL whatever creature you want to call it at this point. Initially I thought it was female just because it had Disney evil queen type of vibes, but it might be an alien. I mean, we really don't know. All we know it has the Renegon, and that alone pretty much makes things broken, right? Walking with the butterflies through the area. Now I'm thinking, like, is this the same area where the giant straw hat was kept before we saw it? Because it did look like it's inside of the marriage wall, but that area in particular just looks like a forest inside a building in a sense, which we've. I'm not even gonna get into that. Instant Messenger Sama is a whole other thing, but we see the butterflies again. Shout out to Bleach. um, walking around. And then, like, the blonde Gorosei, Sanji's dad, was like, Sabo's very unlucky because they know Sabo was there, right, making this phone call. And the mustache Gorosei says something interesting. He says it's fate. Or was it the Gandhi one? I don't remember. One of them, though, says it's fate, which I think they're saying that because since he was the one that started the rebellion in the first place, like he was the news being based on him, right? These kingdoms rebelling and actually taking prisoner to their king, which, by the way, I only remember Princess Kimone. I brought her up, I don't know, 10 chapters ago. I couldn't remember her name. I always confuse her name with Princess Komodo, the Big Mom Pirates. But the only reason why I used to talk about her was because of Law in his submarine, right? I've been talking about it a long time in the series. Like, I don't know how Law, like, he has radioactive abilities if you think about his abilities, but it's like, how is this sub even powered? And we only seen one submarine in the entire series, which also makes it highly unlikely that he left Wano without seeing Pluton, but that's another story, right? The last time we seen a submarine, though, was during the Return of Re arc. And this was the lady who was kidnapped. Remember, those scrubs had that they basically had their Walmart version of a submarine when Kobe caught the torpedo, right? The pink mamba, like that whole situation. That's where this came from. So this is the same people. So in their country, they were from the Lugia, right? And their guards are telling them, hey, just confess your crimes, which I'm interested in what their crimes are. Like the daughter, Princess, I'm sure she's probably had a whole bunch of people killed just by saying, they need to die. But are their crimes just normal? It's messed up that I say normal, but normal celestial type of crimes where they just are not treating people fairly at all and doing a bunch of wild stuff. Like, I'm kind of interested in what their crimes were. I just thought, I just want to know what they do. But Sabo's basically telling Dragon, like, hey, I didn't do this. It wasn't me that killed Cobra. And, you got the whole situation with Morley and Ivankov and whatnot. And I don't know, man, because, like, we get this weird narration in the background, right, where clouds are forming. You think you're about to see Conqueror's hockey, and people are talking about they can see something, like, what's going on. And as Sabo is talking, because he's there in Lelouch now, I want to know why he's there in the first place. Like, I know what the Gorosei said, but why specifically this island? There's so many other places he could have been, and also brings up the question, well, where is Vivi? Because if Cobra is dead and Saba's in Lelouch, and Lelouch just got hit with a hyper viper beam, proton cannon. You know what I mean? Like, just it got destroyed. It looked like El Thor in some ways, right? There's been jokes about Adele and it's Messenger something forever, right? Well, not forever, but as soon as the character was introduced, um, I'm under the impression that they use nature weapon, and a lot of people in chat were saying that. And I know when I go online later today, a lot of people are gonna think this is an ancient weapon, which I think they're right. I don't think this is an instant messenger or Sama ability. Like, I think the crossing of the map, shout out to the map from Dora the Explorer, right? That's way more OP than we thought. Um, I thought that was just more of a metaphorical thing. You know, I don't think it's like, oh, I crossed the map in the island. I don't know, because you never know One Piece, but for a power to be that strong, like, that's what I'm saying again with the ancient weapons, right? They didn't destroy Wano. They could have used this on Wano a long time ago, right? And the other part of this is I'm thinking that one of the reasons why they would be worried about Luffy's ability is because he might be able to counter something like this at his peak, right? Because as crazy as that sound, if you remember back in the Kaido fight, he was able to not only rubberize the ground like a paramecia would be able to, that was able to reflect energy beams, right? It reflected the Boroblast. That's something that we talked about, like during Gear 5, was, what is that going to apply to other things? Um, if he, if you think about how Blackbeard uses Black Hole, right? And I'm sure the more you spread it out, the weaker it gets. But if Luffy somehow, like in his giant form, right? If he did the same thing, if he in his giant form rubberized the ground or an entire country using his ability, then this beam would probably go back up and destroy whatever, it came from, which I'm assuming is an ancient weapon. It doesn't have to be, but I'm just like, what else would it possibly be? Again, I don't think this is an upgraded version of like Kizaru's fruit or something crazy like that, or an L, or I don't know. Like, I don't think instant messenger something has the plasma know me, but the way it was done with the narration in the background, it looks so dope. Like, cause in the anime, like, we think about the jokes in the series, right? As far as time-based plots, right? Think about the birdcage, right? Like, oh, the birdcage is closing in. This is gonna happen, right? We had the Kazumbo and Wano and a few other things in Wano, where it's like, oh, this fire is gonna get us. This is different because it actually happens, and there's nothing you can do about it. It doesn't seem. That was a lot of energy, right? This might make, like, think about how strong, right, ocean sovereignty from Big Mom and Kaido was. Although Senpai Asante did what he did, had that just hit the ground straight, I don't know how much of a country you could destroy, but I don't think it's on the level of this. So we probably really do have to put respect on this out, like the destruction capabilities. We know Luffy can punch a mountain and blow it up, right? Kaido could probably destroy a country by himself, I'm sure. Like, just he could jump from the sky and do that, you know. I don't like Whitebeard, well, Blackbeard now. There's not too many powers in the series from a pure DC, well, kind of, right? That have these type of capabilities. So this right here to me just doesn't seem like it's an ability. It's just that the way it's done when Instant Messenger Sama walking through the forest, I could see if people thought that. And it could be. I could just be wrong. But we never seen anything like this, ever in the series. So for it to be Devil Fruit related or, some other KK Genkai of some sort, I don't think that's the case. I think we're seeing the real deal here. And if it's not, that makes the ancient weapons even more devastating, right? Lucia never existed. And I like what gets said because you can't tell if people found out what Sabo said. But if you look at the panel and the way it's written, because you can't tell who's narrating at that point, where it's like, for everybody who's in the surveillance unit, you didn't hear anything, right? That's what's said before Lucia never existed. No information was intercepted. So, although in the chapter it may look like people don't know, clearly people heard. So the Rev, this message got through because they said cut the surveillance. It doesn't stop Sabo from communicating to Dragon. Now, I want to know is did Dragon know this already? And it's just something he hadn't talked to Sabo about yet, or something he had theorized, right? Because even though we don't know his ability, Sabo was able to sneak in and see the empty throne, right? He's probably not the first person in Rev history or in One Piece history to do that. We just don't know who or why. It's very possible that Roger didn't even know about instant message or something. I don't believe that to be the case. But it's very possible. He might have not even known. And because of the people were saying it in chat, so I know this is one of those things that I know I'm going to see everybody repeat everywhere as if they were the ones who noticed it. This 16 beams thing. I ain't gonna lie, I didn't pay attention to that, but it's like one of those things. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And Dofi is one of the people we haven't talked to. And with what's going on with the Pacifista, the Seraphim, and all this other stuff, Dofi's gonna be back in the story at some point, right? Like he's the Eisen of the series. Like he has to be back in the story. I mean, obviously not as powerful, but when it comes to knowing more than any other character, for the most part, it's been Dofi because he is a celestial, former celestial. So there's stuff he knows about that he just never talked about, right? And Incident Messenger Sama might be a reason why he wanted the agent surgery in the first place because of what that being is capable of, right? That's a whole other, that could be an arc as all. And then you think the chapter is done, but it's not. I thought the chapter was done because that was enough for me. I'm like, the illusion never existed, man. Like, on some Jinbei, what's gone is gone. That hey, look, it's gonna get wild, man. It's gonna get weird where the Elder's not playing, man. Like he's just not playing. Like all this hype has to die down at some point, but maybe not. Maybe not for another. Maybe not the rest of the year. Who knows? Because the way this chapter ends, right? We're in a different climate zone now. We see everybody has coats on. And by the way, I'm like, yo, is that the coat? Like Zoro, you got the goat from the coat's coat from Wano? I mean, I'm cool. I'm cool with that. I just all right, bet. They see this swirl of water, right? And Luffy notices there's a person inside. And so does Sanji. Of course, Sanji does. And Nami is like, yo, how can you be so sure the lady, like, look, Nami, you should never question, right? When it comes to the voice of all simps, Sanji is the absolute master of the verse, right? He's mastered this as an ability as long as we knew. Now, I don't know why Sanji can't be as cool as he is in Shogeki no Sanji, but hey, it is what it is. My man he has the voice of all simps. He's the only character who has it to this degree. So if Sanji says it, the lady, the way Sanji says "lady" in the anime is always hilarious to me. Lady, but when Sanji sees a lady, if he says it's a woman, it's a woman. Kiku might have been the only one where hey, Sanji, you might need to tune your frequency a bit. As much time as you spend at Kawabaka Queendom, if anybody would be able to point them out, it should be you, but apparently not. But it's Bonnie. Now, I don't know what to think of this because, again, this says like Vivi, who knows where Vivi is? I have no idea where Vivi is. I don't want to say I have no idea. Like it's the message or something. I got Vivi already. But that kills a lot of things. And you know what else I think is odd? I won't say it's odd. If Bonnie was in the water, right, submerged, her ability is null and void. Why is she a kid? And I thought about back to like when we seen Bonnie and Zoro, which is funny because Zoro called Luffy a moron in this chapter, and I'm almost certain that's exactly what Bonnie called him. Because, like, I know there's different ways to say idiot or moron, but you hear aho like pretty frequently in different series. So anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. Bonnie is a child. Is this her real form? Like, can her awakening do something to where like we know with devil fruit abilities, like water doesn't necessarily stop it. It doesn't stop an ability from working unless you're like crocodile or katakuri or something. Um, it, I'm not sure because I always assumed Bonnie was, if anything, older, but maybe she has to constantly consume food to maintain that form, or else she goes back to being a kid. Is this like with Luffy's ability where he overuses Gear Second and he goes chibi, just like what Chopper does? Is it like if Bonnie gets exhausted, maybe she was struggling, just to survive. However, using her ability, did she overuse it? I have no idea. But her being a child, like in her child form, it's just like, okay, where Devil Fruit shouldn't be working. So that means she's really a kid? That makes things even crazier. So it's like, is she been constantly eating to look like she has to do that? And does her abilities work on other people? That's been speculated. Why did Gorosei want her in the first place, even though somehow she got away? The Kainu. I'm not going to talk about that right now. Don't even get me started on the Kainu after this chapter, because that's another reason why I think it's not instant message or something's actual power and it's an ancient weapon or something. Just because you guys know you've been rocking me for a long time. I don't necessarily think Akainu was in Sword, but I did a whole video on why he could be and what I thought it would happen to him. Like one of the things I had brought up was I don't even think Akainu dies to Sabo or Luffy or Garp or anybody like that. I think he raises a coup. I know we look at the way he does things and you wouldn't think that, but if you go back to that, I'll probably have to redo that video just with updated information and stuff. Some concepts are still the same, but Akainu could be in Sword. And I always thought Instant Messenger Sama's ability would be used against him because he ends up finding out. Because I don't think the Marines, most of them know. I'm sure there's one or two. I doubt Sengoku or Garp don't know about Instant Messenger Sama. That seems like the type of things they would know about. But then again, who's to say? Anything's possible with this series at this point. But yeah, seeing Bonnie as a child made me think like, if she's always been a child, it just makes things weird. I don't mean like weird, but like, how is that possible weird? Is she from a different time period in general, right? Because you can send people forward through time. Um, I'm very interested to see what people come up with as far as this part, because I'm sure there's a lot of smart people out there who probably can tie some stuff together about what's going on with Bonnie being in a kid form. I don't even know if people really notice that. I've only been in one stream, and that's where I always be at. I usually don't see other content until like Friday night, Saturday morning ish. I start catching up and seeing what with the community, but obviously, it's, you know, um, one of the best ever. This end of the year is going to be hard as far as favorite chapters because we got some contenders. And is Sabo dead? I know we're doing this again with Sabo being dead. I don't know if people are going to notice that or even complain about it just because of the way it's done. But, I mean, we seen how far he could jump in Dressrosa. Even when he didn't have the mirror, he was just standing in midair for I don't know how long with Rebecca. Um, as far as I know, we never seen him skywalk, but unless he has a way to fly, he's, you know, I don't know. We'll see. But thanks for stopping by. I know this is. I know I've been trying to cut these down back to like 30 minutes like I used to, but these it will eventually get back down to like under 30 minutes, hopefully. But because I need to start doing separate videos outside of the chapter. But a lot of times I just end up talking about everything to a small degree instead of just going in depth on what I really want to talk about. But this was I'm exhausted, man. Like I've taken a nap and I'm still tired. That's how hype this chapter was. Um, I cannot wait to come back home later and see what everybody's talking about and watch some reactions, man. Because I know it went down. I know it went down where I was at. Y'all need to be there too. You already know, man. Shout out to the GOAT, Recon D Goat Beard. That's my boy. That's the homie. So, um, y'all be safe out there. Have fun with your weekend. Stay, do whatever it is that you do. Just make sure you back, because when we get back to the latest installment, the ankles are gonna be broken, and I hope mines are one of them, man. Peace.